Hey everybody, this is my video lecture on motivation and emotion. This chapter is about 5 or 6% of the multiple choice portion of the AP exam. It sounds like a really interesting chapter, and the concept is very interesting, whether or not the terminology I teach you is or not. But essentially, the question that I am a teacher, and I ask myself this all the time: what motivates students to do their work, to not do their work? And as a teacher, what motivates me to do what I do? And what is why do sometimes I lack motivation? Usually I'm pretty motivated, but I think conceptually it's very interesting, even if not everything I'm about to teach is interesting. I think it's a very interesting concept. For example, are we always motivated by money? Okay. All right. So I'm going to go through some theories on motivation. Some of these are all, I think they're all pretty easy. First of all, there's instinct theory. Basically, biology, instinct to survive, instinct to make babies. For example, why do salmon swim upstream? That is an instinct. Or if there is danger and my wife and I are walking around, I might step in front of her. That's my instinct to protect her. So survival is an instinct. That's why suicide can be so hard. I didn't mean to go there, sorry. And then in breastfeeding, rooting reflex, okay, for example, that is instinct. Drive reduction theory. I have a way to explain this that I think makes sense. Anytime you make the sound, ah, that's drive reduction. Anytime there is a pressure inside your body and you want to relieve that pressure, for example, going to the bathroom, that is a drive. Okay, it is to reduce the tension of biological needs. Okay, sex is another example of that. Hunger and thirst. Okay, biological needs to do that. These are drive reductions. Okay, arousal theory. Some of us are simply, we like to do things we like to jump off buildings, we like to do crazy things. Or and then some of us are simply just want to lay around and maintain a certain level of arousal. And so it's a theory to explain why we do things like street racing. But some of us want to just chill and watch Hulu all day. All right. There's a certain level of arousal that we want to maintain. Some of us like drama. Okay, some of us want to just relax all the time. Those are different. So, arousal theory says that we want to maintain certain levels of arousal by doing things or not doing things, and that is why we are motivated to do certain actions. Incentive theory, and there's a lot of debate over this, but why do we do things? Do we do it for the money? Do we do it for sex? Do we do it for physical affection? Do we do it for the trophies, for the praise? That is incentive theory. So could I pay you to do your homework? And that's debatable. Um, on a show that I want to show you called This Emotional Life, episode 3, the Chicago Public Schools did a whole program on paying kids to, no, that's not This Emotional Life, that is Freakonomics. And they paid kids to do their work. And what they found is that it really didn't make much difference. We're not that motivated by money. You think we are motivated by money, but we're motivated by a lot of things other than money. Okay. This is important. Yerkes-Dodson Law. And I have my students draw this on their note card. Yerkes-Dodson Law says that there is a sweet spot with anxiety. We want some stress, okay? If you're very relaxed, like you took, like, say, too much anti-anxiety medication and you were just totally chill, then your performance may not be that great. But if have way too much anxiety, and then you get what's called performance anxiety or test anxiety. So if you drink 3 cups of coffee before you take your test, you may have too much anxiety. What we want is somewhere in the middle where our performance is high, our stress isn't too low, it isn't too high, it's somewhere in the middle. We call this an inverted U relationship. So it's like a U, but it's upside down. Okay. So, so think about that. Think about athletes, how we cheer them on. Go, go, go. We try to hype them up. Athletes try to pump themselves up before a game. But then again, sometimes, like a Jedi Knight, you want to meditate a little to not get too aroused. Otherwise, your performance level will not be optimal. Okay. So this is called the Yerkes-Dodson Law. Okay. Hit pause, write that down if you are taking notes. And then Maslow. We talk most about him in the therapy chapter, but Maslow says that we are motivated to achieve we're motivated to achieve these lower level needs first before we are motivated to achieve higher level needs. I don't want to get into that right now. Okay. So hit pause. Anytime I give you a multiple choice question, hit pause before I give you the answer. Which of the following argues that physiological needs create aroused psychological states that cause us to try to satisfy those needs? Ooh, wow, read that a few times. Okay, the answer is drive theory. Oh man, I was thirsty. I wanted to drink. That's a physiological need. Okay. Incentive theories of motivation explain the desire of people to achieve goals in terms of what? Okay, so don't even look at the answers. Think incentive theories, incentives. Hit pause. The answer is external stimuli. Wow, that's a real dry way of saying money and trophies. Okay. This one, you just got to look at it, and I'm sorry if the picture is covering up the answer choices, but it's basically the Yerkes-Dodson Law. Okay, it turns out that difficult tasks you want to have lower level of arousal. Easy tasks, like let's say picking up garbage off the floor, that you would actually do better under a lot of stress. If you average these two U's, you get the Yerkes-Dodson Law. Take a look at it, but this was an actual question. The answer is A. Okay. Which of the following statements best depicts, that means to show, the concept of incentive theory? Oh, incentive theory again. Hit pause. The answer is C. Okay, hit pause. Amanda experienced discomfort in class. She put on a sweater when she realized her discomfort was caused by the cold. Her behavior, oh, that's so much better. Oh, I was cold. Ah, that is a drive. That's drive theory. John loves to do dangerous activities like street racing and base jumping because of the thrill he gets. Which of the following is a theory of motivation that best explains his desire to do dangerous activities? The answer is C. Which graph correctly depicts the relationship between arousal and performance? It was an inverted U, so the answer is A. Okay. All right, now let's talk about hunger. Okay. So think about this. Where does hunger come from? Is it psychological? Is it your stomach? Is it hormonal? What part of the brain controls your hormones? Think about that. The answer is the hypothalamus. Okay, remember the 4 F's. And one of the 4 F's of the hypothalamus is feeding, fight or flight, feeding, and mating. Those are the 4 F's of the hypothalamus. We're going to get more into the hypothalamus right now, into more detail than you ever wanted to know. So write this down if you need to. This is tough, okay? So you've got the lateral hypothalamus. Hit pause if you want to write this down. Lateral hypothalamus deals with hunger. So if you stimulate it, you're going to feel hungry. If you electrically stimulate, like with an electrical stimulation, then you're going to want to eat. Okay. But if you damage or lesion this lateral hypothalamus, then you will never feel hungry again. Okay. So if you stimulate it, you're going to be like this guy. But if you damage it, you'll be like her. Now, the ventromedial, now think back to the hypothalamus song. Ventromedial tells your body when it's full. The ventromedial hypothalamus, when you stimulate it, you feel full. Okay. And then you don't want to eat. But if you damage it, you will never feel full again. You may remember a video that I showed about a little girl who got a tumor on her hypothalamus. She damaged her ventromedial hypothalamus and she never felt, and here's a fancy word, satiated. Satiated, think of the word like satisfaction. She never felt satisfied. So she just ate and ate and ate. So she was like 10 years old and she weighed like 200 pounds. Okay. Nothing wrong with being fat, but it's not normal to be like that at that young of an age. Okay. So a tumor on your ventromedial hypothalamus would mean that you would just eat, eat, and eat and never feel satiated, never feel satisfied. Now, so I was looking at this for years and I thought, man, how do I know the difference between ventromedial and lateral hypothalamus? Well, I came up with something, maybe you'll like it. I'm late for lunch. I'm hungry. The lateral hypothalamus makes you hungry. I came up with that. Hopefully it helps you. So the lateral hypothalamus makes you hungry. So that means if you stimulate it, you'll feel hungry. But if you damage it, you won't feel hungry. Okay. All right. Good luck on this. This is a tough one. Let's try some multiple choice. Hunger and eating are primarily regulated by which of the following? The answer is the hypothalamus. Okay. All right, hit pause if you need to. Which of the following most accurately characterizes the role of the hypothalamus in the regulation of hunger? Okay, hit pause if you need to. The answer is it controls your endocrine system to control hunger and satiety. Think of the word satisfaction, satiety. Okay. A dog will gain weight when, okay, hit pause. The answer is B. Okay. All right, so that one's better because they didn't give you lateral and ventromedial, so that's cool. Okay. Electrically stimulating which of the following brain areas will lead a person to consume more food? All right, so here we go. Hit pause. The answer is B. I'm late, I'm hungry. So if you stimulate the lateral, you will get hungry. If you damage the lateral, you will not get hungry. The ventromedial is about satiety, meaning you're satisfied. You don't want to eat anymore. A tumor that destroys the ventromedial hypothalamus is likely to produce which of the following? Hit pause. Just like the little girl with the brain tumor, the answer is D. Okay. All right. Go ahead and take a look at that. That's a Maslow question. Okay. All right. Now, ladies and gentlemen, so here's the deal. Let's say you go and you pig out. Okay. You do it for 2 days. You just pig out because you're bored, whatever. It's Christmas break, you're bored, and you just pig out. The good news is that you probably will gain a couple of pounds and then you'll lose it in a week because your body wants to maintain a certain level of body fat percentage. It's kind of like a thermostat, it's set point. Set point is your body wants to maintain a few things. It wants to maintain on average 98.6 degrees. It wants to maintain a certain body fat percentage. And unfortunately, and you really need to think about this, you also have a set point for happiness. So if you win the lottery, you're probably not going to be that happy because your body wants to maintain a certain level of happiness. So it's kind of sad that no matter what you do, no matter what bad things happen to you, no matter what good things happen to you, you're probably going to be about the same level of happiness. Sad but true, because you have a set point for happiness, just like you have a set point for body temperature and you have a set point for body weight. So, which of the following concepts explains motivation in terms of an organism seeking to maintain its biological equilibrium? I should have explained this on the last slide, but it's homeostasis. Look at the word homeo. What does homeo mean? It means same, like homogeneous, homogenized. Stasis, think of that, it means state, same state, same state. Remember the autonomic nervous system wants to bring you back, wants to maintain homeostasis. Your parasympathetic nervous system wants to bring you back to homeostasis. Which of the following terms is used in hunger and weight control research to denote the concept that each person has a body fat level that remains fixed and resistant to change? That is set point. By the way, I don't know if you've ever heard of the show Biggest Loser, but people go in weighing 600 pounds. They lose 200 pounds on that show, and then a few years later, they gain most of it back. A lot of that has to do with set point. Sad but true. Okay. All right. Body chemistry. By the way, your hormones. Glucose is your body sugar that controls your hunger. So if your body sugar is low, then you want to eat, and that sugar is glucose. What controls your body sugar? Your your hypothalamus controls it with your pancreas and insulin. All that controls your glucose. When glucose levels drop, hunger increases. Okay? There are psychological aspects of hunger too. Remember the Garcia effect. If you go throw up in a restaurant, you're not going to want to eat there anymore. Classical conditioning. You've got looking at pictures of food makes you hungry as well. Culture makes a difference too. Um, some things look good in their culture, some things don't look good in our culture. Um, and there's some really gross stuff. This is stuff that Americans don't eat, but other cultures do eat. Okay, I've had fried frog legs, that's no big deal, but this other stuff, that's gross. Okay, so the most critical physiological factor in controlling level is the level of blood sugar, glucose. Okay. All right, let's talk about sexual orientation. I've only seen one question on the AP exam about this, but it's still interesting. What motivates, orientation? Well, it turns out that it's totally nature, not nurture. Okay? For example, if you have a child, you cannot make your child gay. It's not going to happen. So you can give your boy dolls, you can give your girl toy trucks, it doesn't matter. We're not absolutely sure what causes homosexuality or bisexuality, but we do know that it's nature and not nurture. You're just born that way. Now, what kind of nurture is it? Well, there were twin studies done. 61 pairs of twins with at least one gay sibling was studied. Of the monozygotic twins, that means identical twins, 2/3 were both gay. That means 1/3 of the twins, one was gay and one wasn't. That says clearly that homosexuality is not purely genetic. Okay, but it's partially genetic though, because identical twins do share their sexual orientation more often than fraternal twins. Look at this. Of the dizygotic twins, that means fraternal, that means they're like brothers and sisters. Only 31% shared their sexual orientation. So that means that it's partially genetic. Okay. Also, we think that a lot of it has to do with prenatal hormones. It turns out that how much testosterone you receive before you are born can affect your sexuality, at least as far as we think. We've made lesbian sheep. and homosexual fruit flies by playing with the prenatal hormones. Okay, a lot of this is theory, but some really interesting stuff. A lot of crazy stuff out there on what causes homosexuality. You can Google it. There's some really cool stuff out there. All right, hit pause. Which of the following statements is supported by research on homosexuality? Hit pause. The answer is E. Okay, so it's partially genetic. Okay, all right. I think this is a basic concept, but it's very important. There's always a question on the AP exam about this. Plus, I find this very interesting. You've got intrinsic motivation, which comes from the inside. Like you do it for the joy of it. For example, why do we feed ducks? We're not getting paid to do it. There's nobody um, giving us compliments for it. It doesn't make us, it just, we feed ducks because we want to feed ducks. Okay. The rewards come from the inside, intrinsic inside. But if we do things for the money, we do things for the trophies, we do it for outside factors, then we call that extrinsic motivation. Okay. So, you know, why am I videotaping these lectures for you? Because I enjoy doing it. And there's a little bit of extrinsic motivation, like it makes me look good for the principals and, and all that stuff. And maybe one day I want to make money with my own online class. That's extrinsic motivation, but I enjoy doing what I do. So that's intrinsic motivation. Okay. Now, sometimes we get too much extrinsic motivation for doing things that we already enjoy doing. For example, here is a baseball player that made almost $30 million a year. Now, let me ask you something. Do you really think he enjoys the game as much as he used to when he did it for free? I don't know. Now, let me ask you this about teachers. If you paid me a $500,000 a year to do my job, will I enjoy it as much? Maybe not. But you know what? I'd be willing to try it. But the reality is that the overjustification effect says that if you give extrinsic rewards for things that people already enjoy doing, then their intrinsic reward drops. That's why elementary school teachers talk about reading logs. You take a little girl who loves reading, and all of a sudden she gets a grade for doing what she already loved doing. That's a good example of the overjustification effect when you get too much extrinsic motivation. All right, intrinsic motivation occurs when hit pause, there is no obvious external reward for one's behavior. Okay. Research studies indicate that people who are intrinsically motivated as compared to people who are extrinsically motivated tend to do what? Read that question again, focus on intrinsically motivated. The answer is A. If you're intrinsically motivated, you're going to do a better job, period. That's why you do better in classes that you like instead of classes that you don't like. Pam works hard in school because her parents give her $10 for every A she receives. Pam's parents are attempting to influence her academic efforts by capitalizing on what? Money is extrinsic motivation. Carla tutors other students because she likes to be helpful, whereas Jane tutors classmates strictly for pay. Their behaviors demonstrate differences between hit pause. The answer is intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. Rudolph spends hours painting in his studio, even though he sells few pictures. Rudolph is intrinsically motivated. All right, so what happens when motives conflict? Well, you've got what's called the approach-approach conflict, where you have two equally good options to choose from. So I got lucky and found this picture. What if, let's say I'm a guy and two attractive women, equally attractive women want to date me. then we call that an approach-approach conflict. Or let's say you have two colleges to choose from and they're both equally good. Which one are you going to choose? That's what we call an approach-approach conflict. Think of it as good, 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 good. Now, what if you have two things to choose from, but there's good and bad for both choices? So both options have their benefits and drawbacks. Okay. So let's say you've got a college that's affordable, but it's really far away from home. That's an approach avoidance conflict. Or let's say your wife asks you, "Does my hair look good?" And you're thinking, if I tell her it looks bad, she'll get mad at me. But if I don't tell her it looks bad, then she'll get mad at me later. So it's a tough situation to be in. So approach avoidance, think of that as good, bad, good, bad. Okay. Now, what if you're screwed either way? Avoidance, avoidance, bad, bad. You're stuck between a rock and a hard place. We call that avoidance, avoidance. So imagine you get in trouble and your parents say, pick your punishment. That would be an avoidance, avoidance conflict. Okay. All right. So hit pause if you need to. Which of the following situations describes an approach avoidance conflict? Okay. Approach avoidance, good, bad. The answer is, sorry if you can't see the answer, but you're trying to choose a car that has good and bad toward it. Which of the following situations poses an approach? Approach, good, good conflict for a person who listens to only classical music. So make sure that it's good, good. The answer is E. All right, so let's talk about 4 theories of emotion. Some of this is history, some of it just doesn't really seem to make a lot of sense, but let's go over it real quick. The James-Lange theory is like way back in the late 1800s. It kind of makes a little sense, but this is history. You probably won't see this on the AP exam, but let me just tell you what it is and let's move on. The idea of James-Lange is that your body reacts to emotion and then you are become aware of your emotion. So it's based on your autonomic nervous system, like your heartbeat or your breathing. Your body changes, your heart starts beating, your breathing increases, and then your mind becomes aware of those emotions. So I'm afraid because I run. Like what? So it's a really old, outdated theory, but it's like, I must be afraid because I'm running. Strange. But let me try to back this up a little bit. Maybe our body does react first because there was a study done of people who held up their middle finger while they were reading a story. One group extended their forefinger, that's the control group. The other group extended their middle finger, that's the experimental group. And they read a story about a character who could be interpreted as being either assertive or hostile. The experimental groups interpreted the story as hostile rather than the control group interpreted the character as just being assertive. So maybe our body does react before we have our emotion. It's a thought. And this in class, this is where we did the facial feedback hypothesis. And I really wish you were here that day, but I gave 1/3 of the class a straw and had them put the straw in their mouth like this. And I gave another third of the class a straw and had them do it like this, to simulate a frown. And then the control group had no straw. Then I played a funny video. And then I asked everybody in the class to rate how funny they thought the video was on a scale of 1 to 10. Now, it doesn't work every time, but the group that simulates a smile sometimes should think the video was funnier than the group that simulates a frown. It turns out that the facial feedback hypothesis says that you're more likely to be happy when you actually fake it till you make it. Studies have been done on this. If you make your eyebrows do this, you will feel more negative emotions. So remember all those times when your mom says, if you just smile, you'll feel better. You know what? Maybe mom was right when she said that. Okay? Maybe Ned Flanders was right in this Halloween episode where in his universe he forced everybody to smile. Okay? Maybe. All right, so hit pause and do this question. So here we have a worker that faked being happy all day long. And so, according to the facial feedback hypothesis, it's his job to be courteous to customers. So he smiled at passengers frequently. Okay. Then there's the Cannon-Bard theory of emotion. Now, again, I've only seen this once on the AP exam, but the Cannon-Bard theory says that the physiological change, heart rate and breathing, and the cognitive awareness must occur at the same time. At the same time. So, whoa, your heart beating, your breathing, it happens at the same time. So, think about this. If you have two cannons firing at the same time, your physiological change, your heart rate, and your breathing happen at the same time as your cognitive awareness of your emotion. That's Cannon-Bard. I promise you, I'm not going to ask you a lot of questions about this. Now, this one is more important. This is the most respected theory of emotion. It says that you can put a cognitive label on your physiological arousal. So let's say something scary happens. Your heart rate, your breathing, and then you label that as emotion. Okay? So for example, let's say you're in a car traveling at the ground at 60 miles an hour. You could think, oh my God, I'm going to die. Or you can think, oh, wow, this is fun. You can you can put a cognitive label on that. Okay. Now, so think Schachter two-factor. Schachter two-factor. The Stanley Schachter two-factor emotion theory. Schachter two-factor theory of emotion. And that second factor is your cognitive labeling or your cognitive appraisal. Okay. Now, at this point, I want to show you a video. Hit pause and read this. Now I'm going to show you a video.
A high suspension bridge on a windy day is just the place to put Art Aaron's theory to the test, that danger can provoke passion.
We had an attractive young woman stand on this scary bridge, and every time a young man would walk across by himself, she would stop him and say, "Excuse me."
I'm doing an experiment for my psychology class on the effects of exposure to scenic attractions on creative expression. Would you mind filling out this questionnaire for me, please? Here's a pen.
Almost all the men agreed to do it. After all, it was an attractive woman asking a man to do something. They didn't want to admit they were scared.
And then I have a picture for you to look at. And I'd like for you to write a brief dramatic story based on this photograph.
Okay. So the man would write the story, and when he was done, she'd say,
"Thank you. I appreciate your time." And I would love, I don't have a whole lot of time now, but I'd love to explain the experiment in more detail when I do have more time. So I'm going to give you my number, and you can feel free to call me. It's at my hotel.
Okay. So she would write her name and phone number on the edge of her little sheet, tear it off, and hand it to her.
Great.
Well, my name's
So
Linda.
this is the scary bridge.
I hope you call me.
Okay, Linda. Thanks.
Thanks.
She stopped 20 men on the scary bridge, and then she stopped another 20 men on another bridge that was a big, heavy, safe bridge, not very scary at all.
I am doing a project for my psychology
This is
class
the
on the
control
effects of
group.
exposure to scenic
Of the
attractions.
men who met her on the scary bridge,
Please fill out this.
many more phoned her that night than the ones who met her on the safe bridge. The other thing we did is we looked at the stories they wrote. Far more romantic and sexual content when they met the woman on the scary bridge
She's embarrassed because her boyfriend wants to marry her.
than when they met the very same woman on the safe bridge.
I think this woman is a little embarrassed about something that's really not that important at all.
Aaron believes that when our heart is pounding in our chest, we unconsciously look for the most attractive explanation. And if an attractive person of the right sex is standing by, then we're happy to assume we've fallen in love.
So what does this have to do with Schachter two-factor theory of emotion? Well, imagine you're on a scary bridge, your heart's beating, you're breathing, and then you meet somebody, and the idea is that your label is wrong. You label that heart rate and breathing as sexual arousal, but it's not sexual arousal. It's just you're a little scared of being on the bridge. And this actually happens. Studies have been done on roller coasters where people find other people more attractive after the roller coaster than before it. So you could say that it's Schachter two-factor. It's mislabeling the arousal, or you could say that it's dopamine in the brain. Either way, it's an interesting topic. All right. So in the James-Lange theory of emotion, which of the following immediately precedes an emotion? Hit pause and go back and look at the slide on that. But the answer is C. The answer is C. Okay. All right. So your heart rate's breathing, and your breathing happens before you have the emotion. The two components of Schachter and Singer's theory of emotion are your and your cognitive assessment. The answer is D. The answer is D. Okay. According to Schachter and Jerome Singer's theory of emotion, which of the following is true? Hit pause, do the question. The answer is A. The answer is A. Okay. Schachter's explanation of emotions places emphasis on what? The answer is D, the cognitive appraisal. The cognitive appraisal. Okay. Ugh, I hate this question. We cry when at the same time we notice we feel sorry inside and are involved in a sad situation. This question's still confusing to me, but the answer is B. And you know what's even more confusing is that I added at the same time. I added that phrase. When you have two cannons firing at the same time, boom, it's cannon barred. Okay. We feel sorry because we cry. That's James-Lange. Ugh, I hate this stuff. All right, easy stuff here. Stress, something that we all know too much about. There are two stress hormones. I've never seen them on the test, but they are cortisol and adrenaline. Okay. And cortisol does lead to weight gain. I learned that from my studies in weight loss and watching The Biggest Loser. Now, this is on every test. Hans Selye studied the way that we react to stress, and he said that we have three stages of dealing with stress. So let's say a trigger happens. Like, let's say you're a soldier and you hear gunshots from the enemy. That's alarm. That's when you're like, oh man, your amygdala triggers, and then your heart rate starts going up. Your hypothalamus puts all these stress hormones in your blood, and you're like, oh crap, I got to deal with this. Another example would be you're driving around at night and it's raining, and then boom, you get a flat tire. And you're thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do now? That's alarm. Then after a few hours, of dealing with the stress, you're just hanging in there. Or how about this? It's spring and you've got a lot of work to do for class. That's resistance. And then you crash. Hopefully you don't crash before you have work due in class. Hopefully you crash after graduation, or you crash in June, but you don't crash in early May or in April. We call that exhaustion. Exhaustion would be like you're in a hospital and you've been working for 24 hours straight, and then you just go home and you sleep for 2 days. Okay? That's exhaustion. Resistance is when you're on hour 23 or on hour number 40, and you just keep on working and you just keep on. One more thing is that resistance is bad for your immunity. Stress causes your white blood cells to not do its job. And so if you have too much stress, you could get sick. Your immune system doesn't work as well. Okay? So, which of the following are the stages of Hans Selye's general adaptation syndrome? Hit pause. The answer is D. Okay. All right. Hit pause and read this. We've all been through this before. And the answer is A, general adaptation syndrome. Hans Selye's general adaptation syndrome is an attempt to explain what? And the answer is E. All right, read this. You're a restaurant, you've been working really hard, and you're just hanging in there. You're still working, so it's not B, it's A. You're hanging in there. Exhaustion is when he goes home and collapses on the couch and sleeps for 2 or 3 days. How you feel in June, that's exhaustion. Some of you get exhausted in May and you just shut down. Okay. Gustav was out for his daily walk when he was approached by a thief who demanded his wallet. He immediately felt an increase in his breathing. That's alarm. That's alarm. Okay. A hostile person with a type A personality is most at risk for developing which of the following? Heart disease. True. The #1 killer in America, too. All right. All right. So another thing about emotions is that we have universal emotions. We also have universal facial expressions. Even blind people have the same facial expressions. A guy named Paul Ekman studied universal facial expressions. And some other people studied them in children. These facial expressions are universal, and they even happen in blind children. It doesn't matter where you go in the world. And Paul Ekman actually was on the set of Lie to Me. Hopefully you've seen at least a couple of episodes of this show. It's on Hulu or on Netflix right now. It's a good show. At least watch the first 2 episodes. Now, although that we do have the same facial expressions around the world, we also have what are called display rules, meaning different cultures don't display these facial expressions in the same. For example, if you go to Russia and you go walk around on the street smiling, that's a bad thing. You do not do that. You'll get robbed if you do that. You'll be taken as a victim. Display rules. In East Asia, people don't smile in public. Okay, so here's a girl who was raised in America and she likes to show pictures of her parents smiling at wonderful events. It's kind of funny. If you just Google parents not smiling, and you'll see her blog or Twitter or something where she shows pictures of her parents at the Grand Canyon not smiling, or at Disney World not smiling, or at her graduation not smiling. It's kind of funny. Okay. So people from different cultures can recognize which facial expressions. The answer is all of these. One of the consistent research findings in the area of facial expressions and emotions is the hip pause, and the answer is A. Okay. I didn't teach you this, but a polygraph machine is often called a lie detector, although it does not detect lies. It responds to changes in what? Heart rate, sweating, breathing. The answer is B, autonomic arousal, your autonomic nervous system. Which of the following findings about emotions is well supported by research? The answer is A. There are universal emotions. Okay. Karen had been working overtime to complete a project so that she could go skiing at the end of the month. On the day of her trip, Karen got sick with the flu and had to cancel. Stress hormones had the most likely affected her immune system by doing what? So is it good for her immune system or is it bad for her immune system? The answer is C. All right. So I want to talk to you about individualism and collectivism. Individualism is a cultural thing. It's really sociological rather than psychological, but individualism is the idea that the individual is more important than the community. The United States is the most individualistic country in the world. But if you go to, say, like East Asia or Southeast Asia, you're going to get more collectivistic cultures. And this varies even inside the United States. But no matter where you go around the world, you're going to see different variations of collectivism. Where in China, I read that there is a saying, the blade of grass that sticks up is the first to get chopped off. So in collectivistic cultures, they discourage uniqueness. They discourage people to think only about themselves. And Americans, we're always teaching our kids, you can do it. You're awesome just the way you are. And that's very much individualistic. So placing group needs above one's own needs is known as, the answer is C. Okay. All right. Hit pause and really take a look at this. Happiness, like I said before, there is a set point on happiness. And it doesn't seem to matter if you have kids or how attractive you are. It doesn't seem to relate to age, which is weird because we all think that once we hit 30 that we're all just going to die of depression. That's not true. It turns out that old people are pretty much as happy as young people. I know that's really hard to believe, but it's true. Now, gender, women are more depressed, but they're also more joyful too. So it all averages out. Okay. But all of this stuff from the science tells us that all of this is positively correlated with happiness. Now, who studies happiness? There's something called positive psychology. And this guy, his name is Martin Seligman. And this is the same guy who electrocuted dogs to study learned helplessness, right? But what he found is that, he started a movement called positive psychology. And here's his book, The Hope Circuit. But anyway, positive psychology is the study of what makes us happy, what makes us productive. And if you studied IO psychology, industrial organizational psychology, then you'd be very interested in positive psychology. What makes your employees happy and productive? Very good, very interesting reading. So, which branch of psychology focuses on creative, adaptive, and fulfilling aspects of human experiences? The answer is B, positive psychology. And finally, which of the following statements is true? Um, the answer is D. Um, the answer is D. Now, C is interesting. The truth about C is that once you make $75,000 or more, then any more than $75,000 will not affect your happiness. But if you're homeless and sleeping under a bridge, yeah, happiness, money will make you happier. But once you hit about 75,000 per person, any more money is not going to make a difference. Okay, that is it. I hope that was helpful and have a good day.